Hello everyone. Welcome to Mr. Noctory, boring ancient history stories for sleep. The Angel Gabriel is not described as a comforting figure, but as a divine presence that causes people to collapse in fear, to be overwhelmed, and to feel, with terrible clarity, how small they are in the face of the infinite. He does not appear to give advice, but to change fate, to end eras, to declare heaven's decree. In all major religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Gabriel holds the central role in revelation, and no one who has encountered him remains intact. His terror does not come from violence, but from clarity. When Gabriel appears, all illusions collapse, and you are left, naked ego before absolute truth. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what Historian Sleepless is doing here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from all across the world. Right now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft, humming sound. And with Historian Sleepless, step into tonight's journey. When Gabriel appears, the world falls to its knees. People often imagine angels arriving with harp music, soft heavenly glow, and a formal welcome, like you've just been upgraded to the premium human package. But no, when Gabriel appears, there is nothing gentle, no harp, no golden light, no "Hey buddy, I've got good news." Only one thing: wait. Not the kind you measure, but the kind that feels like your soul just got crushed by a neutron star. The bodies of those who see him betray them. Knees buckle, hands shake, breath fails, and the heart tries to resign on the spot. Daniel, a prophet no stranger to divine presence, collapsed to the ground when he saw Gabriel. Drained of all strength, face in the dust, as if Gabriel's very breath had blown out the life inside him. But Daniel was not the only one. In the year 610 in the morning, in a cave called Hira near Mecca, the prophet Muhammad also encountered Gabriel, but not in a dream, in solitude, during meditation. Gabriel did not say hello. He commanded the prophet to read. No explanation, no gentle gaze, just a pressure against his chest, so intense Muhammad thought he was going to die. He ran home, trembling, whispering to his wife, "Cover me with a blanket." No halo, no trumpet. Just Gabriel's presence was enough to make people forget how to breathe. The feeling of his arrival isn't an angel is watching you. It's more like someone is squeezing your heart with a hand made of light. You don't faint from awe. You collapse because your body realizes, before your mind does, this is no ordinary encounter. The sound Gabriel makes doesn't come from a mouth. It vibrates in your spine, like metal stretched in a world with no air. As he draws near, your will disappears. Reason crumples like paper in fire. All that's left is a primal response: kneel, stay silent, and pray you don't get incinerated. No strength remained in me. My face turned deathly pale, and I was helpless. No one invites Gabriel. He does not come when prayed to. He only appears when the fabric of reality must be torn down. He is the ripped seam on the back of the universe, the terrifying click before everything resets. And humans, prophets, priests, or chosen virgins become unworthy objects before a being who does not belong to this world. He does not enter a room. He forces space itself to pull back to make room for his form. He does not knock. Doors dissolve into light. And in that moment, Reality feels fear. The whole world steps back. Earth forgets to spin. Time pauses to hear him breathe. That is why Gabriel is never described as beautiful. The light around him is not guiding light. It's more like the headlamp of an oncoming train. Unavoidable, incomprehensible, inescapable. Gabriel does not come to point the way. He comes to declare that all paths have ended. He is not evil, but far too correct to be safe. The light around him doesn't illuminate. It blisters the skin of your soul. You don't look at him. You are exposed before him. And though no one says it out loud, everyone knows. This one doesn't bring news. This one brings change. Gabriel doesn't knock softly on history's door. He's not like a Greek messenger god, inviting you out of Plato's cave. Gabriel doesn't lead you into the light. He blows the cave to pieces. Every belief you've ever had collapses like a deck of cards. And when the dust settles, he's still there, unmoving, not to explain, but to confirm. The universe just restarted. He punches through it, then lets the splinters fall in silence, because when he appears, no one remains standing. The whole world buckles. If you think Gabriel is a mailman angel, you've mistaken him for Hermes. Gabriel doesn't deliver messages. He delivers eras. In the book of Daniel, written around 539 years before the Common Era, Gabriel appears not to chat or comfort a man in prayer, but to issue a document of destiny with a tone that leaves no room for debate. Fate has been sealed. No conditions attached. No footnotes. When Daniel kneels in prayer for his people, Gabriel responds with a declaration written in celestial coordinates. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people. Meaning, the man who asked, "When will we be freed?" was handed a 500-year calendar. Gabriel doesn't speak human language. He redefines the language of time. It's no longer a conversation. It's a proclamation. In Judaism, Gabriel does not carry a sword, nor a press badge, nor a peace treaty. He carries a celestial bronze chain, and when it drops into his hand, the wheel of time begins to spin in a new direction. But Gabriel never uses the language of fear. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't shout. He simply presents reality. And that reality doesn't just knock the wind out of the listener. It reprograms history's flow. Gabriel does not remind. He does not negotiate. He does not work like Raphael by the bedside, or Michael leading the charge. He is simply the final PDF file signed by God. No feedback section, no edits, no note saying please respond within 3 to 5 business days. Only 2 words: execute it. Gabriel is the one who, when he speaks, kingdoms topple like dominoes. Not because he brings armies, but because he brings attachments. The only reason he needs. He does not offer opinions. Gabriel proclaims a kind of truth that doesn't aim for your heart. It aims for the entire era of the universe. He does not speak to make anyone feel better. He speaks to alter the nature of reality. His voice doesn't sound like a voice. It sounds like gravity. You don't hear it, but you are forced to kneel. And so, when Gabriel speaks, you don't need to listen closely, because it doesn't matter. The word has been spoken. The law has been activated. History holds its breath. Chapter 3. The one who silenced saints. There's something strange about Gabriel. He doesn't need to shout to silence the world. He just needs to appear. And when he does, even those closest to God go mute. Let's begin with Zechariah. a priest who thought he'd seen it all in the world of temple rituals, until one day, while he was performing his duties in the temple, probably around 6 years before the Common Era, Gabriel appeared, suddenly and without warning. Gabriel said, "Your wife will bear a child." Zechariah, instead of kneeling and giving thanks, responded with a very human logic. "How can I be sure of this?" Gabriel didn't get angry, didn't shout, didn't set the altar on fire. He simply said, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God. I was sent to speak to you, but because you did not believe my words, you will remain silent until the child is born." And just like that, boom, the priest was banned from speaking for 9 months. Not a word, not even a sniffle. No press conference about being visited by an angel. When Gabriel speaks, all arguments get shut down. Then there's Daniel, the great prophet who survived lions and read mysterious writing on walls. But when Gabriel appeared, Daniel didn't preach, didn't proclaim. He collapsed. In the book of Daniel, he describes the moment as being struck like lightning. His entire strength drained, not a racing heart, not a shiver like hearing thunder, but a full system shut down, like your brain trying to process a dream too vivid, and your body deciding to tap out. No glowing halo, no angel choir, just a holy fatigue, the kind caffeine cannot fix. And Mary, the one chosen to carry the Saviour, a glorious honour. Gabriel appeared, said earth-shattering things, and Mary panicked. The Bible says she was greatly troubled, not moved, not delighted, troubled, worried, shaken, like getting an email from the IRS at 2 a.m. No one encounters Gabriel and walks away the same. No one hears Gabriel and responds calmly. And that's what makes him terrifying. Not that he wants to hurt you, but that his presence makes you no longer yourself. He doesn't strike the body. He strikes awareness. When Gabriel appears, every psychological structure built by habit, belief, and self-control collapses. What's left is a trembling being facing a cosmic message with no ability to reply. Not all angels are created alike. Some were made to fight, like Michael, the one who wields a flaming sword and the temperament of an invisible warrior, appearing at the edge between order and chaos. Some were sent to heal, like Raphael, who gently walks with the traveler, mending wounds and piecing together what's broken with a hand no one can see. But Gabriel, he doesn't come to fight. He doesn't come to comfort. Gabriel doesn't carry a sword. He carries the conclusion. Where Michael stands between mankind and its enemies, where Raphael kneels to bandage the fallen, Gabriel walks straight into the room and speaks the irreversible. No prologue, no options, no swelling music like a Marvel movie. Gabriel is not the kind of angel who sends advance emails or reacts with emoji. He doesn't ring the bell, check in, or schedule an appointment through Google Calendar. He's the kind of legendary superior, the one whose presence in a meeting means it's already been decided. No rebuttals, no presentations. And if you ask, "Can we go back just a little?" Good luck submitting that transfer to another realm request. Gabriel doesn't ask, doesn't suggest, doesn't attach files or leave feedback notes within 3 to 5 business days. He declares. His voice doesn't roar like thunder, but it weighs like gravitational force. You might picture Gabriel as the one who walks into a courtroom after the verdict has been read. No jury, no defense attorney, Only his voice, hard as letters carved into stone, final as the sound of a coffin closing. And that's it. It's like the universe just made a decision, and he's the one reading the copy out loud. When he appears, everything has already been settled. There's no time left to think it over, no space for doubt. All that remains is a silence, the kind that expands through the cosmos when you realize every door is already shut, and he is the sound of the last lock turning. That's what sets him apart. Not that he's more powerful, but that he never needs to argue. He's not like a general shouting orders to march. He's like the scoreboard at the end of the game, the thing that gets posted last, the thing no one can change. You don't negotiate with Gabriel, you execute. And so, his fearfulness doesn't come from threats, but from inevitability. Gabriel is the angel of the moment when there's no way back. He doesn't arrive with hesitation. He arrives like the roll call of destiny. You can turn your face away, but that won't change the fact that the list is being read. And if he speaks your name, you rise or you fall. He is the face of heaven when heaven has already signed the order. A presence that needs no reason, only authority. Gabriel isn't just the one who reads heaven's final document. Sometimes, he's the one who sets the whole manuscript on fire. He doesn't always communicate with words. He doesn't always say, "Listen closely." There are times when he acts, and when he acts, the world doesn't learn the lesson. It gets wiped clean. In the Book of Enoch, an ancient text considered too dangerous to include in the official Bible, Gabriel doesn't arrive with a message. He comes for purging. When the fallen angels, also known as the Watchers, descended to earth and taught humans forbidden knowledge like war, magic, prehistoric cosmetic surgery, and even how to craft weapons of mass destruction, Gabriel was sent, not to talk, not to investigate, but to erase. His name remains unchanged. God is my strength. But his role now resembled a divine wildfire, sent to disinfect history. He didn't play the role of law enforcement. He played the role of disappearance, so that deviation left no trace behind. In some mystical traditions, Gabriel is even said to have burned Sodom and Gomorrah, two cities that didn't require a trial, just one look from heaven and a rain of fire. You think angels carry feathers and harps? Gabriel carries orders of annihilation and the ability to execute on sight. When he doesn't speak in words, he speaks in ash. He's the kind of angel who doesn't include a warning label, may disturb sensitive viewers. No, he's the reason you never find the beginning of the movie, because it was burned out of the first frame. If his words mark the turning point of history, his silence is the black hole that swallows the entire previous chapter. And Gabriel doesn't feel the need to explain. No note, no memo. Only a new reality. Order restored, as if the glitch had never existed. He doesn't show up to handle consequences. He's the reason the consequences cease to exist. Imagine standing before someone who is not a messenger, not a judge, not an executioner, but the enforcer. Gabriel does not ask, "Are you sure?" Does not say, "This is your final warning." Does not offer a plan B. He arrives when all options have run out. In apocalyptic texts and Islamic tradition, Gabriel is not merely the angel of revelation, but heaven's final representative. When negotiation is no longer needed, if Michael is the one who defends order, if Raphael is the one who heals what is broken, then Gabriel is, what comes after, when there's nothing left to save, when a crack has become a fault line. Gabriel steps in, no crown, no armor, no angelic choir behind his back, and time freezes. He is the image of closure, not with tears, but with the cold sound of a door shutting. No persuasive voice, no special effects, just presence, and everything must follow. He carries no blueprint. He's not here to check the progress or ask, "What stage are we in?" He brings the execution order. No one calls Gabriel in to negotiate. Heaven only sends him when conversation is no longer relevant. He is the final period you don't get to rewrite. The kind of angel who doesn't show up to help you understand, but to make things begin happening, without pause. In the book of Enoch, when the rebellious angels were sealed underground, Gabriel was the one who locked the door, not with magic, but with a silent motion, as if it had always been meant to happen. In other traditions, he stands at the edge of the apocalypse, saying nothing, just raising his hand at the appointed moment. No one sees him argue, because when he appears, there's no one left to argue. Gabriel is not the symbol of death. He is the symbol of unpostponed action. And once it's his turn, every negotiation, no matter how delicate, becomes nothing but the echo of a past that has just been locked shut. You've probably heard the word revelation many times, and if you're like most people, you imagine it as a sacred, gentle moment, pure and light, a soft glow shining into the heart of the chosen one. But no. When the Prophet Muhammad met Gabriel in the cave of Hira around the year 610 of the Common Era, it wasn't a peaceful backdrop for writing poetry. It was shock, literal shock, mind and body. Gabriel didn't emerge with soothing flutes or pale cream-colored light. He pressed upon reality like a physical force. The Prophet wasn't gently encouraged to recite the Quran. He was commanded 3 times, with such intensity that Muhammad thought he would die. The messenger returned home, trembling, wrapped himself in a blanket, and said, "I feared for myself." In that moment, he was no longer a prophet, not Khadijah's husband, not a man seeking truth on a mountain. He was just a creature, shaking, stripped of identity, as if the angel's light hadn't just shone through him, but dissected him layer by layer, leaving behind a version of himself who had never known who he was. That is humanity's first reaction to a real angel, fear so deep you forget who you are. And then, Gabriel revealed his true form. Not a man with wings, not a cute angel from Renaissance paintings. Gabriel had 600 wings, stretching across the horizon, each wing blazing, covered in feathers and gemstones. When he spread them, the sky vanished. When he appeared, reality cracked like an eggshell. No background music, no soft halo, only the total absence of a safe space, as if you'd just been pushed off a level of heaven you didn't even know you were standing on. This was no revelation in the illustrated religious textbook sense. This was a fracture in the human framework of perception. And Muhammad was not alone. In Hadith literature and Islamic tradition, Gabriel is always described as a flood of light, not to illuminate, but to overwhelm. A light that does not enlighten, but strips, tearing away every measuring stick you've ever used to understand the world. He doesn't come to help you find yourself. He comes to shatter the ego, so that you become an empty vessel, ready to be filled with words that cannot be refused. That is why true revelation is not beautiful. It's not gentle. It's shattering. Not heaven whispering, but heaven crashing down. Not faith blooming, but the old world being ripped out by the roots. When Gabriel speaks, you don't rise, you collapse. Not because of gravity, but because something inside your soul cracks, like an old door that couldn't handle the knock of eternity, and you never stand up the same again. Gabriel doesn't need a second time to repeat a message. When the end of days is mentioned in apocalyptic texts, people often picture a trumpet. Not just any trumpet, but the trumpet blown by the Archangel Gabriel himself. But this is not the kind of sound that makes you stop in awe. It doesn't fill the space like an epic movie score. It takes the air away. A deafening blast, but one that can't be measured in decibels, because it's not a sound you hear with your ears. It's a sound you feel in your spine, a sound that makes space shrink, as if someone had just squeezed the atmosphere tight. The ground doesn't shake from destruction, but from the retreat of reality's very structure. When Gabriel blows the trumpet, it doesn't call anyone to come. It pulls everyone toward the inevitable. In that moment, you are no longer a citizen, a parent, or a person with life ideals. You feel your ears ring, your heart stutter, your throat turn to chalk. Memories don't return in sequence, but in the weight of regret. Your knees buckle, not because you were made to kneel, but because there is no longer a reason to stand. You are nothing more than a particle of the universe, gathered to hear a verdict. It's not that the sound floods in, it's that reality gets sucked out, like the scream of the universe collapsing, a kind of silence with shape, something you cannot describe, only feel in the absence of everything familiar. It is no longer the world of prayer, it is the world of the final answer. Not just in Christianity, in Judaism. The day of the Lord, Yom Yahweh, is described with black clouds, thunder, and smoke, a day no one hopes for, but everyone fears. In the Hindu epic Mahabharata, the god Krishna blows the trumpet before the greatest battle in human history. And each trumpet blast is the shattering of a soul. Gabriel does not belong to one religion. He belongs to the moment all beliefs melt into truth. The trumpet doesn't sound to frighten you. It sounds to say, it is time. And when it rises, no one stays still. No one hides. No one remains who they were, because that trumpet does not just announce the end. It cuts time in two. One half is everything you ever thought mattered, and the other half is what you cannot carry past the sound. Gabriel is not a punisher, at least not in the way we usually imagine. He doesn't arrive with fire and sword. He doesn't speak threats. He doesn't force anyone to kneel. Gabriel simply tells the truth. And that alone makes him the most terrifying figure in the entire divine realm. There is no dagger sharper than an unavoidable truth, no verdict heavier than a prophecy you cannot refuse. No hell collapses faster than the moment you realize what he said was what you always knew, but refused to accept. Like the noon sun crashing into an interrogation room. Gabriel's words don't come from the shadows. They're too bright, too clear, to the point that every stain, every fear, every lie gets laid bare like a report you never signed, but always knew was waiting. When Gabriel speaks, he is not warning you about the future. He is pulling the future toward you, placing it in your palm, cold as stone and irreversible. You cannot turn away from Gabriel, not because he's too beautiful, but because he's too clear. His presence strips away each layer of belief, each excuse, every reason to delay what you must do or endure. It is the saints themselves, those closest to the divine, who are the first to be shaken by his presence, not because they didn't believe in him, but because they understood him all too well. Daniel collapsed, not from fear, but from the weight of prophecy. Zechariah lost his voice, not out of punishment, but from the shock of truth. Mary was speechless, not because she didn't understand, but because she understood exactly what she would have to become. Gabriel's truth is never personal, but it always finds the wound. In the Hadith, the Prophet Muhammad trembled when he met Gabriel for the first time in the cave of Hira, not because he didn't understand, but because he understood too clearly that from this moment on, his life would no longer belong to him. Gabriel doesn't force you to change, but once you've heard him, not changing becomes impossible. You will no longer be the same, because now you know the truth has been spoken and you have heard it. There is no turning back, no shell thick enough to shield the soul once it's been laid bare by a voice that offers no pity. Gabriel doesn't need to scare you. Humans lie, sometimes out of kindness, but Gabriel does not come to make you feel better. He is the mirror to the soul, and no one feels comfortable seeing themselves that naked. You will collapse, not because he pushes you, but because the weight of your own truth has nowhere left to hide. And maybe that is the most terrifying judgment of all, a truth that no one can bend. There's something curious about how humans remember angels, most of the time, not very accurately. Gabriel, the greatest angel in the three major religions, the messenger of prophecies that shaped all of human history, has been softened, diluted, even spiritualized over time. From the being who made prophets collapse, he became a symbol of inner balance and soothing voices in meditation apps. In the 2000 American TV series, Supernatural, Gabriel is portrayed as a trickster, witty, approachable, and sometimes funny. In New Age angel decks, he's the one helping you listen to your inner voice when you choose the wrong salad or need motivation for morning meditation. If you've seen him appear in animated videos with pastel wings, a calming podcast voice, and advice like a life coach, that's definitely not the angel who made Daniel collapse in terror. Today, you'll find Gabriel on Christmas cards, in meditation apps, on wall posters with glittering wings and a smile as warm as a Boy Scout's. But that is not the Gabriel saints once knelt before. Gabriel truly is not a guide through the dark. He is the light so blinding it burns the path you were on. In the Bible and the Quran, he doesn't come to soothe wounds. He comes to expose the truth, no matter how torn it is. When Gabriel appears, the world doesn't soften. It fractures. No one summons him. He arrives when heaven has something to say. No one negotiates with him, because he doesn't bring options. Gabriel doesn't hand you a map. He tears up the old one and points in a single direction, the one you can't turn back from. Even when the message he brings is good, like announcing to Mary the birth of Christ, he is not described as approachable. Mary was afraid. Zechariah was struck mute. Muhammad trembled. None of them said, "Thanks for the uplifting message." They entered a metaphysical shock, not because they doubted, but because they knew their lives had ended and something else, bigger, more intense, had just begun. Gabriel doesn't let you move forward with half faith. He splits time, shatters old belief, and erects a future that is non-negotiable. We've domesticated Gabriel in popular culture because what else can we do to face him? We turned him into the angel of inspiration, intuition, and soft, white light. Because if we remembered him correctly, we'd have to admit something terrifying. The truth is never comfortable, and Gabriel is the embodiment of that truth. Gabriel doesn't strike with a sword. He exposes you to the unavoidable. He doesn't frighten you with punishment, but with absolute clarity. He's not your judge. He's the mirror that shows who you truly are. And for many, that's more terrifying than hellfire. When he speaks, kingdoms fall. When he blows the trumpet, the world shuts down. And when you hear his voice in your heart, then congratulations. There's no turning back. Barnim. Lilith, Adam's first wife, queen of demons. History isn't silent, it just edits out the inconvenient parts. Before Eve was ever mentioned, there was a woman named Lilith, not taken from a man's rib, not extracted as a missing piece to make Adam less lonely, but created from the same earth, at the same time, in the same form as Adam. And that was the first problem. Lilith wasn't born to be a helper, not heaven's secretary, not some divine assistant. She was herself, a complete being, the first prototype of a woman who needed no one's validation. Eden, if you imagine it as a paradise of light and peace, was, in reality, a system with structure, with hierarchy, with ranked priorities. And in that system, equality became a malfunction. Lilith didn't accept a supporting role, not out of pride, but because she didn't understand why she should. And because in many other ancient cultures, from Sumer to Egypt, creation goddesses were often the architects, not the afterthoughts. Namu, the Sumerian goddess of the sea, birthed the heavens and the earth without anyone by her side. So why, in Eden, did the first woman have to begin from a rib? She wasn't programmed to obey. There was no yes dear button in her mind, no pre-installed spell called women must be humble. She looked at Adam, eye to eye, not upward, not downward. And that, in a world unaccustomed to women with opinions, was dangerous. Her existence raised a question no one in Eden could answer. If I am not lesser, then why must I lie beneath? Nobody liked that question. Not Adam, not God, and certainly not the people who rewrote the story centuries later. So Lilith disappeared from the official record, not because she was weak, but because she didn't follow the script. A first woman, not exiled, but who left Eden on her own. No statue bears her name in temples. No biblical chapter records her farewell, because Lilith didn't need to be saved. And a woman who doesn't need saving is the thing that makes every system of power most uneasy. Adam didn't argue. He didn't scream. He didn't plead. He just looked at her with eyes that began to see her as a problem, not because she was dangerous, but because she refused to play the role of the obedient wife. In truth, it didn't take until the Middle Ages for people to fear women with opinions. In Akkadian texts from the second millennium before the Common Era, wind spirits named Lilitu came to symbolize the idea of non-compliance, particularly women who refused to live according to the roles society expected. Lilith, as an ancient symbol, didn't invent rebellion. She was merely the earliest form of a question humanity has never quite answered. Are women born to obey or to choose? And unfortunately, That question was first sparked in the bedroom, long before Lilith flew from Eden. Images of women rising up against male authority appeared in Mesopotamian mythology. Inanna, goddess of love and war, once demanded access to the underworld and defied the entire divine council. Lilith wasn't the first rebellion. She was simply the version we were forbidden to mention again. All great myths need a battle, and this was humanity's very first, not on the battlefield, but in the bed. The issue wasn't love, it wasn't life, it was position. Adam wanted Lilith to lie beneath him, a request that, on the surface, may seem intimate, but in the world of symbols, it was an order. To lie below meant submission. To lie above meant dominance. Lilith refused, not because she was rude, but because she understood the language of power all too well. We were made the same. Why should I lie beneath you? Adam, unable to offer a good reason, did what many men would go on to do for thousands of years. He tattled to God. And God, instead of mediating, sent 3 angels to negotiate, not to ask Lilith what she wanted, but to insist she return to her proper female role. Lilith didn't scream, she didn't cry. She said just one thing: the true name of God, a sacred sound humans are forbidden to speak. And then she flew away. No one cast her out of Eden. She left, because staying would have meant becoming something she was not. That's what made Lilith legendary. Not because she was saintly, not because she was sinful, but because she turned left when everyone else turned right. In the Bible, people remember David, remember Goliath, remember Damascus, remember Pharaoh. But Lilith, she is like a ghost hovering around history, always at the edge, always referred to in metaphors, always the thing people project their fears onto. After flying from Eden, Lilith was erased from the official story. She has no stone tablets, no sacred verses, no one teaching children that she refused the heaven-approved female role. Instead, Lilith was reborn in the hills of sleeping eyes, in heavy dreams, in folklore with no clear origin. She became the succubus, the night demon, a phantom haunting sinful men. The reason priests would shout, "Sin comes from such temptations." Lilith was turned into a monster not because she killed, not because she was cruel, but because she wasn't a good wife. In religious systems ruled by men, there is no room for a woman who is free, no space to honor someone who said the name of God and chose to fly away instead of obeying. Lilith was deleted. It wasn't a chronological accident. It was an editorial decision. Religion, like any system of power, needs a clean storyline. Adam is legitimate. Eve is repentant. Lilith, too defiant, too uncontrollable, and too dangerous to be remembered. When a woman is erased from the story, she doesn't vanish. She just slips out of the text and lives in whispers, in amulets, in every dream no one dares to say aloud. She becomes the hole in Eden's manuscript, a typo scratched out, but the ink stain still there. And Lilith became the symbol of what all control systems fear most, a woman who rewrites her own role. And when a woman is erased from the story, people get to rewrite her in any form they want. From revered to reviled, she was rewritten as the devil's lover, the mother of demons, the cause of infant deaths, and the shadowy figure haunting bedtime stories. You've probably heard of Eve, blamed for eating the forbidden fruit. But have you ever heard of Lilith, blamed for walking away? In a world where freedom is a threat, silence becomes punishment, and Lilith became the symbol of terrifying silence. The first woman, not exiled, not defeated, but simply unwilling to return. And so, she was labeled a demon. But if you were Lilith, standing before Eden, hands still covered in earth, wings not yet stretched, and you knew what waited inside was only a role someone else had written for you, would you go back, or would you keep flying, no matter what history chose to call you? And so every story after pretended she never existed at all. After flying from Eden, Lilith did not vanish into the mist of history. She landed by the Red Sea, a body of water that was anything but gentle, where mythology began to bleed. Here, Lilith did not wait for redemption. She didn't build a tent and cry. She gave birth. Hundreds, thousands of children with no father, no blessing. These beings were called the Lilin, children of the night, of freedom, of a mother who had no permit to exist. And when Adam complained to God that Lilith had left, instead of asking why, God didn't console him. He gave an order. 100 of Lilith's children must die every day. No trial, no lawyer, only a death sentence. 100 children, every single day. Lilith, enraged and broken, responded in the way only someone who has lost everything dares to say, "If I cannot keep my children, I will take yours." It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a transformation, from a woman erased to a permanent threat. Her name, from then on, was no longer tied to Eden, but to nightmares beside cribs, not found in holy texts, but etched into amulets, hung in baby rooms as a desperate prayer. Please don't come tonight. 3 angels, Senoi, Sansanoi, and Samangaloth, were sent to find Lilith, not to apologize, but to bring her back. But when she refused, no new chapter was written. They began writing bedtime warnings instead. Lilith became the cold wind at 3 in the morning, the touch on a baby's wrist that jolts a mother awake, the shadow with a name. She didn't harm because she was evil. She harmed because she was made to pay. And when the price is 100 dead children a day, revenge stops being a choice. It becomes the survival instinct of the cursed who dared to live free. Lilith did not die. She transformed, transcended. From a rejected wife, she became the mother of darkness, the symbol of buried pain and power. She stands at the edge of life and shadow, living proof that when pushed outside the safe circle, a woman can become what society fears most, a waking nightmare. From this moment on, Lilith stepped out of the role of a wandering soul. She became a cultural icon, not just a fear, but a moral tool. She was blamed for everything that happened in the dark: miscarriage, infant death, even unconscious desire. A ghost, but used to remind women, don't cross the line. In later Middle Eastern traditions, Lilith appears alongside creatures like Lamashtu, both accused of attacking infants and pregnant women. But while Lamashtu embodied blind destruction, Lilith was consequence with logic, a fierce reaction from a soul that had once been broken. Her pain was not personal, it was political. And for that, Lilith was no longer just a victim. She became a warning, and at the same time, the scream of women no longer allowed to speak. Throughout history, many simple things have been blown out of proportion into horrifying nightmares. Lilith is one of the clearest examples. And she is not alone. From Medusa in Greece, turned into a snake-haired monster for surviving a rape, to Pandora, blamed for all evil just for opening a box no one explained, to the witches of Salem, burned alive for being too clever or too silent. Women who dared to challenge power were all labeled dangerous, demonic, or foolish and destructive. Lilith is merely the first chapter of a book history is still writing. How to turn a woman into a warning. Society isn't truly afraid of demons. Society is afraid of losing control. And Lilith is its harshest test. She didn't commit murder, didn't cause destruction, didn't tear anyone apart. Yet the only crime that made Lilith despised and turned her into a symbol of menace was daring to say no. In a world where women are expected to endure, to be obedient, and to submit, a woman who refuses to comply becomes unacceptable. Lilith becomes the embodiment of every male fear, the fear of a woman who holds power, who speaks, and who cannot be controlled. Stories passed down about Lilith always emphasize her contradictory nature, a seductive beauty, alluring yet dangerous, a free spirit with wings, yet a shadow constantly lurking. She is the owl's cry, the cold wind's sigh at midnight. Interestingly, Lilith is often portrayed with bizarre traits, sharp claws, bird-like legs, or wings, symbols of wild freedom, but also foreign and fearsome. Why give Lilith monstrous features? Because if she looked normal, like any woman in society, who would dare punish her? Monstrosity is an ancient strategy. When a woman cannot be controlled, make her deformed. So there's a reason to fear her, avoid her, erase her from memory. From the sighs of oppressed women, from the quiet eyes of those who won't yield, Lilith became a demonic symbol, not because she was evil, but because she was too dangerous to social norms. Today, we don't call Lilith a demon anymore. We call her too much, hard to love, impossible, radical feminist. The words change, but the system remains. Still punishment for stepping out of the role assigned to women. And so, in every tale, folk, or pop culture, whenever people need to blame someone for disobedience, for chaos, for uncontrollable desire, they invoke the name of Lilith. Because in their world, if you don't obey, you're a demon. So if Lilith is the demon, then who is the god? The one who ordered 100 children killed every day, or the woman who said no and walked away without permission, without looking back? When orthodox religion falls silent, mysticism speaks. In Kabbalah, the mystical theological system of Judaism, Lilith is not forgotten like she is in the Bible. She is no longer a wandering ghost on the outskirts of Eden. She has her own throne. In the Qliphoth, the tree of death, opposite of the tree of life, Lilith doesn't just exist, she reigns. In Kabbalah, the tree of life is a spiritual map toward enlightenment, where each level represents the growth of the soul toward light and God. But few notice. It has a reflection, a shadow called the Qliphoth. The Qliphoth is not hell in the Dantean sense. It is the accumulation of everything repressed. Instincts, desires, rebellion, the rage of those not allowed to be angry. And in the swirl of what's been pushed down, Lilith is not the one who fell. She's the one who rose from it, seated on the throne as if it had always belonged to her, not as Queen of Light, but as ruler of the rejected. To the Kabbalists, everything sacred has a shadow side, and if God has a kingdom of light, then there must also be a kingdom of what's been repressed, silenced, crushed. Lilith is not evil. She is the reflection of the divine through a cracked mirror. There she stands beside Samael, the angel of death, of orderly destruction. Samael, in Jewish mystical tradition, is not a demon, but the executor of tasks God chooses not to perform directly. Lilith and Samael are not together because of love. They do not love each other like in romantic poetry. They merge in a disturbing way, as two opposing fragments of the human self, like will and desire, like ego and instinct. If Adam and Eve represent lawful order, then Lilith and Samael embody truth left in the dark. Lilith's throne is not made of gold. There is no coronation, no choir singing praises. It is built from haunting, silent screams, and midnight dreams people don't dare confess. She gathers what society discards: lust, rebellion, longing with no name, and places them on the throne as proof of what was denied. She is the question no one wants to answer, the dream that was never written down, the softness forbidden from making a sound, like Morgan Le Fay in Arthurian legend, or Maleficent in modern fairy tales. Lilith is the prototype of every woman labeled a villain, simply for not following the script. They are not evil, they just do not conform. And in the hell assigned to her, she does not weep. She sits upright, wears the crown. Because if she cannot be a citizen of heaven, then at the very least, she will be queen of the forsaken. And in a world that only glorifies light, Lilith's existence is a political act. She does not rule out of hunger for power. She exists to prove the rejected part of the human soul also has a voice, also has a throne, also has a name. In the official Bible, the thick one in hotels, churches, and sometimes even courtrooms, Lilith almost doesn't exist. No chapter tells the story of her flying away from Eden. No verse mentions her children. No line says her name clearly. Just one fragment, a single vague sentence in the book of Isaiah, chapter 34, verse 14. And Lilith shall find a place of rest. Depending on the translation, it might say screech owl, or night monster, or simply demon. And that was enough. Official silence, but fear never stays silent. When sacred text falls quiet, whispers take over. When doctrine skips over, talismans speak up. And Lilith, once a forbidden name, suddenly becomes the whisper behind a newborn's neck, the reason for wet dreams and difficult births. She shows up in every unspoken fear. If the baby cries tonight, maybe Lilith visited. If a woman bleeds too much during labor, maybe Lilith passed through. If a man dreams of touch without being touched, maybe it was Lilith. No need for proof, no need for a body. Just fear, inherited generation to generation. She lives in the alley behind the church, in the embroidered charm under your pillow, in the round amulet stuck to an infant's forehead, to keep away poison. In the soft, unwritten rules, women shouldn't go out alone at night. Women shouldn't be too curious. Women shouldn't say no too many times, because if they do, someone might call them Lilith. Like figures erased from epic history, like Enheduanna, the great poet forgotten in the shadows of time, Lilith is an ancient example of how collective memory doesn't vanish. It just gets rewritten. She's not taught in schools. She has no statue in town squares, no official holiday, but she lives in every custom, every unspoken teaching, like a background program, invisible, but controlling every choice. Lilith became cultural malware. Say her name and you're the problem. Act like her, too bold, too stubborn, too independent, and you need fixing. No one sees Lilith, but everyone behaves like she's always there. No one teaches Lilith in church, but every girl learns to fear her, not through scripture, but through wary glances, whispers, and warnings soft as wire. Don't be too rebellious. Know when to be quiet. A woman should know her limits. Lilith doesn't need to be printed in sacred text to have influence. She is a spiritual virus, passed down through fear, surviving in complicit silence. She was once called a screech owl, erased from every sacred text, turned into a demon, blamed for wet dreams and sleepless infants. But Lilith, like every image repressed for too long, eventually came back. And she didn't return with thunder or red fire. She came back with an electric guitar. Since the 1960s, when the feminist movement began rising, Lilith unexpectedly became a cultural symbol. No longer a child-snatching succubus, she transformed into a goddess of freedom, defiance, and powerful playlists. She appeared in. Not just as a mythical icon, Lilith gradually became a lifestyle. From Gothic fashion, crescent moon necklaces, to claw-inspired motifs. She stepped out of ancient books and into wardrobes, from legend to personal statement. Lilith isn't just a figure. She's a style choice for those tired of being just cute enough to be accepted. In tarot decks, the Lilith card represents shadow, instinct, and choosing the opposite path. In comic books, often a villain, but seductive, intelligent, and unbreakable. In rock music, as a symbol of unapologetic womanhood. In video games, from Final Fantasy to Diablo, Lilith returns with claws, black wings, and eyes that pierce the soul. And in Lilith Fair, a music festival exclusively for female artists, founded by singer Sarah McLachlan in 1997. As a declaration, if no one gives us space, we'll create our own. In modern Wiccan rituals, Lilith is invoked by her true name, not as a demon, but as a goddess. She's no longer Eva's shadow, but the first woman to say, "I choose me," and was punished for thousands of years for it. The funny thing is, those who once feared Lilith now wear shirts with her face on them. The 20th century didn't change Lilith, it changed how we see her. What was once labeled dangerous, rebellious, shameful, is now called by a different name: choice. Those who once warned she's acting like Lilith now use her symbol as their social media avatar. And the girls who grew up being told, "Don't be like her," now stand on stage, holding a microphone, saying every word clearly. "I'm not Eva, I'm me, and I'm not sorry for that." Like Harley Quinn, Maleficent, or the dark goddesses of comics and film, Lilith doesn't need redemption. She just needs to be fully told. No longer a cursed villain, she becomes a symbol for everyone who's ever been told they were too strange to be loved. I'm not Ava, I'm me, and I'm not sorry for that. If Lilith is a demon, then who defines demons? Who draws the line between angels and the cast out? Who gets to point a finger and say, "This one is dangerous, that one deserves forgiveness"? For Lilith, her only crime was not being obedient. She didn't obey. She didn't stay. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't kill Adam. Didn't shatter Eden. Didn't burn heaven to the ground. She simply refused to lie beneath, and when she wasn't heard, she left. And to the world at that time, that was more than enough to strap black wings on her back, sharpen her fingernails into claws, and assign her a supernatural criminal record stretching through the ages. In a universe where submission is called heaven, even the smallest defiance can be labeled hell. Lilith doesn't represent evil. She represents defiance. Not chaos for the sake of destruction, but a new order designed on her own terms. She's not alone in that fate. Like Medusa, turned into a monster for daring to look up after being violated. Like Joan of Arc, burned alive for daring to hear the voice of God without male permission. None of them killed. None of them waged war. None of them hated. They simply dared to trust themselves. And in a world where a woman's belief in herself is seen as a threat, that is the one unforgivable sin. She is the image of someone who walks away when everyone else says, "Stay, try a little harder." Someone who rewrites the role, knowing she'll be burned into the banned books. Someone who chooses freedom, even if it means walking alone. And that, in a world afraid of autonomous women, is the ultimate threat. Because every time society can't explain something, it needs a face to blame. A baby crying at night, a wife who leaves, an unspoken rage, all easier to bear if someone is named. Lilith becomes the mask pinned on every chaos people are too afraid to name. And so she is monsterfied, because in that ancient framework, if a woman who's gentle, silent, and smiles on cue is an angel, then the one who dares ask, "Why must I bow when I too was made from the earth?" gets stamped as demon. Blamed for every oddity, every wrong dream, every unexplained scream. Not because she caused them. She doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to wield a sword. She only needs to walk away, and the system trembles. Because sometimes, it's easier to call someone a demon than to admit she was right. Lilith was never canonized. No statues were built in her honor. No holiday celebrates her. No mainstream movie tells her story as that of a hero, because she never apologized. Unlike Eve, who was made from a rib and chose to stay, Lilith was formed from the same earth, and she chose to leave. She didn't die for love. She wasn't redeemed. She didn't come back to beg. She chose being alone instead of playing the role someone else had written. She chose exile over compromise. She chose truth over safety. And perhaps, because of that, she became a demon. Because in every era, a woman who chooses for herself is enough to make all of heaven tremble. Lilith is not a perfect symbol. She's sensual, rough, not sweet, not flattering. She is the image that makes moralists uneasy. She is the question the system doesn't want to answer. She is the decline button in a society that teaches you how to accept. She doesn't need Adam's forgiveness, doesn't need God's praise, doesn't need the world's approval to live as her true self. She only needs one thing, the freedom to be herself. And sometimes, just that alone is enough to become a legend. Arsakum, where does your consciousness go when you sleep? Forbidden knowledge. The brain doesn't shut down when you sleep. It just switches shifts. Every night, you lie down, pull the blanket up to your chin, and declare to the world, "I'm going to sleep." But while you surrender to your pillow and the hum of the ceiling fan, a part of you doesn't rest at all. On the contrary, it begins its busiest shift of the day. That part is your brain. Not only does it not turn off, it lights up like Google's data center. During the REM stage of sleep, the one people usually call dreaming, your brain becomes more active than when you're sitting in your Monday morning meeting. Your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for logic and decision-making, quietly retreats like your boss leaving the office. Meanwhile, your emotional center, memory hub, and image processor explode like fireworks in your head. The result? You meet a cat that speaks French. You fall back in love with your ex, except they've turned into a seahorse. You run a marathon without legs, and still finish first. And strangely, in the dream, it all makes perfect sense. But that's only REM, which usually kicks in about 90 minutes after you fall asleep. Before that, you pass through the non-REM stages, when brain waves slow down, heart rate drops, and the body enters a kind of power-saving mode. But the brain still doesn't shut off. It continues tidying up memories, sorting emotions, and sometimes even running in the background to prepare for the dream to come. To put it simply, non-REM is when the movie theater sets up the seats, checks the lights, tests the sound. REM is when the screen lights up and the play begins. The issue is, many people still think sleep means power off. But that's like believing the internet disappears just because you're not holding your phone. Your brain never turns off. It simply shifts from diplomacy mode to civil war, between memories, emotions, and images you've never seen. The funny part, you try to meditate to calm your mind, while every night it does that on its own, by creating a parallel universe. And then you begin to wonder, why do I see things I've never encountered? Why does a part of me know it's a dream, and yet still feels fear, still feels pain, still remembers? The answer may lie in the very structure of consciousness itself, because consciousness doesn't disappear when you sleep. It simply hides behind the curtain, directing the play you're about to witness. Since ancient times, humans never truly believed sleep was just biology. The Egyptians believed the soul left the body each night to meet the gods. The Greeks worshipped Hypnos, the god of sleep, and he was the twin brother of death. So every time you sleep, you're not just resting. You're entering a ritual of transformation, where life and death meet in the middle. This is also where dreams begin. And dreams aren't as random as you think. Remember, if your brain is still lit up while you sleep, then what's being projected and who's watching? We'll follow that trail of light all the way to DMT, the chemical that might just be your ticket to the universe. When your brain lights up like a Christmas ad billboard, it might be the moment DMT starts to pour out. What do you think your brain is broadcasting every night? A soft lullaby, a romantic film, or a surreal movie where you're flying a giant fried chicken across a burning wasteland to rescue your inner self? The answer might involve a strange substance, a tiny molecule that shakes the entire universe. DMT, dimethyltryptamine. DMT, the strongest hallucinogen your brain naturally produces. DMT isn't something you only buy from a shady dealer in a Peruvian alley, although that's partly true. It's an endogenous hallucinogen found naturally in many plants, animals, and most importantly, inside the human brain. Many researchers believe the pineal gland, a tiny dot buried deep in the center of the brain, produces DMT at night, especially during REM sleep. The pineal gland, once called by René Descartes the seat of the soul, is actually a small endocrine gland only about 5 to 8 millimeters long. Some modern neuroscience hypotheses suggest that here, the INMT enzyme, indolethylamine N-methyltransferase, might be involved in synthesizing natural DMT, though this is still debated due to DMT's rapid breakdown and the difficulty in measuring it. Even so, animal models like mice or monkeys have shown that the pineal gland and midbrain system are directly related to visual response, hallucinations, and even transcendent emotions during deep sleep. This has led many researchers to believe DMT isn't some biological accident, but rather a purposeful part of how we experience dreams. Which means, when you dream of floating through space, talking to a six-eyed being that quotes philosophy, it might not just be imagination, it might be DMT. Live streaming. Imagine, each night when you sleep, your brain auto-logs into a cosmic Netflix, but without pause buttons, no next episode option. You don't pick the genre, don't know who directed it, and no one tells you if it's a documentary or a fantasy. What's fascinating is, whether bizarre or terrifying, you always keep watching. Because your brain writes, directs, and DMT broadcasts the whole thing. A kind of internal TV network where only you and the universe whisper to each other using imagery and emotion, dream, or hallucinogenic journey. Those who've taken synthetic DMT describe the experience like this: being sucked into a tunnel of light, meeting geometric beings that can sing, feeling time melt like ice cream in the sun, and the strangest part, the sense of coming home, even though you've never been there. Sound familiar? Because many people describe their dreams the same way. The only difference, they didn't take anything at all. So if your body produces DMT every night, the reasonable question becomes, are dreams a kind of hallucination, or the other way around? Is hallucination a way of accessing another reality, chemical or cosmic key? DMT is no modern scientific discovery. Since ancient times, many civilizations have used DMT-containing plants in spiritual and religious ceremonies, like ayahuasca in the Amazon, or tryptamine mixtures in the Eleusinian mysteries of ancient Greece. The indigenous didn't call it hallucination. They called it soul meeting, ancestor communication, or homecoming journey. What's remarkable is the visuals, sounds, and emotions they describe are uncannily similar to the dreams we experience every night. But we, out of habit, call it random. Some believe DMT isn't just a hallucinogen, but a third eye, a bus ticket for consciousness to travel into another layer of reality, where what's hidden in waking life becomes visible. In a 2019 study, over 80% of DMT users reported feeling like they had just met a conscious entity, intelligent, communicative, and able to see through them. Oddly, many dreams give us the same sensation, that something is watching, guiding, or delivering a message. Even in near-death experiences, survivors say they saw white light, floated out of their bodies, and heard voices they believed came from something greater. These descriptions, in detail, eerily resemble a DMT trip. This raises an unproven but deeply compelling hypothesis. Does DMT not only appear in dreams, but also in moments between life and death? And all of that happens inside your head, in the dark, when the world around you is silent. So what is DMT in dreams? A random chemical, an evolutionary survival tool, or the universe's fingertip, brushing your consciousness every night? No one knows for sure. But imagine this. Someone dreams of standing before a glowing door. Hears a voice saying, "Be careful with the real door tomorrow." They wake up confused and forget the dream. 3 days later, they open the wrong basement door and fall, breaking their leg. Was DMT just scripting nonsense? Or was it a forecast from another layer of reality? No one knows for sure. But one thing becomes increasingly clear. When you drift off to sleep, you may not just be dreaming, you might be connected. When your mind gets a few steps ahead of reality, and you haven't even tied your shoes yet. Have you ever dreamed something, and then, a few days later, it actually happened? You ran into an old friend, even though you just had a spiritual boba tea with them in your dream the night before. You dreamt of an accident, and the next morning, that familiar car lay tilted in the middle of the intersection. You saw a forest fire in your dream, and by noon, the news reported the worst wildfire in years. The question is, was it just a coincidence or a forecast? You're not alone. Even Abraham Lincoln once dreamed about his own death, and not just Lincoln. In 44b, C, E, the wife of Julius Caesar, Calpurnia, dreamt that he would be murdered. She begged him not to go to the Senate on the Ides of March. He didn't listen. He died. Mark Twain, the famous American writer, said he once dreamed of his brother's funeral, weeks before his brother died in a steamboat accident. Even Carl Jung, the psychologist who fathered the field of dream analysis, once said, "Dreams are the guiding words of the soul." Whether you lived in Roman times, the 19th century, or today, there's a truth that lingers like a shadow at the end of the hallway. Some dreams know things before you ever think to. A few days before his assassination, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln described a strange dream. He was wandering through the White House, where everyone was silent and mourning. A soldier said, "The president is dead, assassinated." Lincoln woke up, shaken, unsure why it felt so real. 3 days later, he was shot. Historians might call that coincidence, but your drama-loving mind, it calls that a prophecy. Prophetic dreams aren't rare, you just don't notice them. Plenty of people have dreamt of earthquakes, plane crashes, or even flunking a test. Some dreamt of numbers and woke up to win a small lottery. Others dreamt of a burning house and discovered faulty wiring the next day. There are dreams like short stories, where you meet a stranger in a place that feels made up, only to walk into that exact moment 2 weeks later. Like the dream was your first draft. Of course, not every dream comes true. But some, undeniably, see something. If dreams see ahead, where do they go to look? If time is a straight road, then dreams are birds flying diagonally, sometimes landing a few steps in front of you. Or think of it this way, you're playing a game. In your dreams, your brain isn't just playing the current move, it's looking at the whole board. It's not trapped by time like when you're awake. Some neuroscientists believe consciousness in dreams runs on its own space-time system. Linear time is just a backdrop, and dreams are the warped data layered on top. And in deep sleep, you might slip into a fold, see something not yet here, like a traveler with no motorcycle, just eyes shut tight. Suppose your consciousness is a hand with built-in GPS. To predict the future, it has to break through the wall of time, like slipping behind the circus curtain to peek at the next act. Some psychologists suggest dreams are how the subconscious pieces together real-life clues and creates grounded predictions, like Sherlock Holmes in pajamas. But what about dreams with no clues, no hints, no logic? Some theories say, when you sleep, your consciousness can escape linear time, like rising to the third floor to look down on the map of reality. From there, time isn't a one-way street, it's a folded map. And for a fleeting second, you see something about to happen. Prophecy. Or is your brain just a mischievous screenwriter? Picture your brain as a trailer director. Each night, it splices together clips from memories, emotions, news you skimmed, music you forgot to turn off, and turns it into a 10-minute teaser. Part fiction, part coming soon. That's how dreams work, like Marvel movie trailers. You only realize it was a spoiler when the full film hits theaters. Of course, maybe you just dreamt nonsense, and when something actually happens the same way, you jump and yell, "Oh my God, I dreamed this," because your brain is a brilliant screenwriter, and it writes hundreds of dream episodes each night, most of which will never air again. But the one that hits jackpot, you remember it forever and call it fate. But if it really was a prophecy, who sent the message? Many ancient cultures believed dreams were divine mail. The Egyptians had temples just for sleeping. Yes, dream temples, where people went to ask for dreams. They believed dreams were tools used by gods to guide or warn. In ancient Greece, Morpheus was the god who shaped dreams and blew them into your ears like soft winds. In the Bible, Joseph, the dream interpreter, decoded Pharaoh's dreams and saved Egypt from famine. If generations trusted dreams as reliable news, why does the 21st century insist it's just neurons firing randomly? That's when all theories start sounding strange. Some believe dreams are signals from higher beings, letters from your future self, or echoes from a parallel dimension, where a different you already lived that moment. Sound like science fiction? Definitely. But maybe that's why people don't dare to believe it's real. Prophetic dreams don't have to be right, just right on time. You don't need to dream the winning lottery numbers or the next apocalypse to call it a prophetic dream. Sometimes, it's just a glance, a name, a feeling that nudges you to skip a ride, take a different path, or send a message just in time. It doesn't rewrite history. It just rewrites your tiny script in a way only you can understand. Some prophetic dreams open doors best left closed. There are people who, after dreaming something vividly real, wake up paralyzed, unable to move, unable to scream, and in the corner of the room, something is watching. Not every prophetic dream is gentle. Some tear open a thin veil between two worlds. When you open your eyes, but no longer own your body. There's nothing funny about waking up and realizing you've lost control of your arms, your legs, or even your own breath. No one warns you about this when they say, "Good night." Your mind is awake, but your body is not. This state is called sleep paralysis, a strange phenomenon where your consciousness wakes up, but your body remains locked in the paralysis of deep sleep. It lasts a few seconds to a few minutes, but it feels like an hour, You try to scream, no one hears. You try to move, your muscles refuse to cooperate. And sometimes, just to add to the fun, you see a shadow in the corner of the room, or you feel something sitting on your chest, breathing, watching, waiting for you to react. From Tokyo to Tunisia, everyone sees the same thing. The strange part isn't the paralysis, it's that people from every culture, every religion, every era describe the same experience. In Japan, it's called kanashibari, a spirit's grudge pressing down on you. In Latin America, se me subió el muerto, the dead riding your chest. In the West, it's the old hag, a witch sitting on top of you. Why is it that people who've never met all see the same shadow, feel the same pressure, sense the same presence? Could it be that they're all seeing into the same world we usually can't? What does science say, and why isn't it enough? They say that during REM sleep, the body paralyzes itself to stop you from acting out your dreams. If the mind wakes up before the body unlocks, you're stuck. This condition is especially common in people with chronic sleep deprivation, night shift workers, or frequent flyers crossing time zones. In fact, studies at Harvard in the 2000s found that sleep paralysis happens more often in people who consume caffeine, take antidepressants, or have sleep disorders. In other words, the modern world may be increasing your chances of seeing the shadow, thanks to the crazy biological clock it forces on you. But none of this explains why millions of people see the same thing: the figure, the pressure, the breath. Could all of humanity be sharing the same hallucination? Or maybe it's not a hallucination. Maybe you've stepped into the threshold between waking and dreaming, between life and death. Sleep paralysis isn't just a technical glitch in your brain. It's the moment when consciousness leaves the safe zone, no longer locked in the physical world, but not yet deep inside the dream. Some say it feels like standing between two layers of reality, where other beings are waiting, watching, or trying to make contact. Could this state be the thin connection where the mind slips through, but doesn't arrive? Some compare it to near-death experiences, where consciousness leaves the body, but doesn't fully depart. There's darkness, there's silence, there's the sensation of floating between realities. Many people even report meeting beings, hearing voices, or sensing an invisible gate. The feeling is nearly identical, except with sleep paralysis. You come back, but with near-death experiences, not everyone returns to tell the story. What if that shadow wasn't a hallucination? Some theories say the shadow is a primal imprint, an ancient fear of predators in the night, carved deep into our subconscious. In Buddhist philosophy and ancient yoga, the state between sleep and wakefulness is called turiya, the fourth layer of consciousness. It's not sleep, not dreaming, not waking. It's a space of observation, without judgment, without reaction. Monks and meditators train for decades to reach turiya. But you, an ordinary person, might fall into it after one sleepless night, one strong coffee, or one long-haul flight. Turiya, no effort needed, just sleep paralysis. But some believe the shadows are real, interdimensional beings, or dream parasites, only able to reach you when your physical world defenses are down. Whatever theory you choose, the experience is the same. You open your eyes, and you know you're not alone. And what if it's an invitation? What if sleep paralysis isn't a malfunction, but a doorway? You are like an actor caught between two stage curtains. Behind you, reality closing. In front, the dream not yet revealed. In the thin darkness between those two worlds, you feel something watching. Maybe like a quiet audience in a shifting theater. They're not trying to scare you, but to see. Do you realize you're standing between dimensions? A crack in perception, where, for a few seconds, you can see through the layers of reality. A hazy invitation from another world, asking, will you take the next step? And if you do, are you sure you'll want to come back? When 5 hours pass in your dream, but you've only been asleep for 7 minutes, there's another clock inside your head. Have you ever experienced this? You dream you're back in school, taking an exam, turning it in, hanging out with old friends, getting your heart broken, learning to move on, finding a new job, rebuilding your life. Then you jolt awake, and the clock says it's only 2:17 in the morning. Not even 30 minutes have passed since you fell asleep. So where did all those days happen? Not just in your dream. This phenomenon doesn't only occur in sleep. When you're in deep meditation, time can stretch like rubber. When you're playing music with passion, 2 hours can pass in what feels like 3 minutes. Neuroscientists call this the flow state, when the brain disconnects from the real-world clock and plugs into an inner clock. In other words, time is sometimes just a subjective feeling the brain constructs to simulate flow. In dreams, that feeling is magnified. Science agrees the brain has its own dream clock. In 2009, German scientists at the University of Bern conducted a simple yet astonishing experiment. They asked lucid dreamers to count from 1 to 10, then move their eyes left-right to mark how long it took them in the dream. Compared to real-world time, the results showed 10 seconds in the dream often lasted 20 to 30 seconds in reality. And in some cases, the opposite. A sequence of actions lasting over an hour in the dream only took a few minutes in real life. So-called time is no longer linear. 2 years later, in 2021, an international team of scientists from France, Germany, the Netherlands, and the United States conducted another, more ambitious experiment. They didn't just measure time in dreams, they communicated with lucid dreamers, asking simple questions like, what is 3 plus 1? And received answers through intentional eye movements. The results showed, even in dreams, the brain could receive instructions, process information, and respond accurately within real-world measurable time. A parallel world of consciousness functioning like reality. In dreams, memory works like compressed playback. In a single moment of a dream, you can relive your entire childhood, stretched out, detailed, and hauntingly vivid. But in reality, it might have only taken a few seconds of neural activity, like a zip file being instantly unzipped. The brain doesn't need to simulate every moment. It only needs to reconstruct the core emotion and a coherent sequence, and you'll believe it lasted for hours. So is time real, or just a feeling? This question was posed by St. Augustine in the 4th century. I know what time is, so long as no one asks me. In dreams, you don't need the sunrise to know it's morning. You don't need a bell to know class is over. You know time by feeling, and that's enough to fool yourself. But what if time is a structure created by consciousness? If consciousness can stretch, compress, shut off, or generate time, then it means we don't live in time. Time lives in us. Like a stage where the brain directs the play called past, present, future, just to make itself understandable. You're the lead actor. Your brain is the lighting director. When you're awake, the physical stage lights up. When you dream, the emotional stage is set aglow. And in that darkness, time no longer needs a ticking clock, just a heartbeat, a sensation, and a quiet sense that something is moving. And dreams are when the stage curtain tears open, exposing the light behind the scenes. Some quantum physicists have even proposed time doesn't have to flow in just one direction. Subatomic particles sometimes appear to influence the past, a paradox called retrocausality. If that's the case, dreams might be where you feel this paradox. No lab required. When a place you've never been feels strangely familiar. There are dreams where you return, not arrive. You don't need GPS. You know exactly which corner leads to the stream behind the house. You know the green door will open into a small kitchen with cold stone floors, where you once sat for a long time, watching sunlight pour through a foggy window. The strange part, that place never existed in real life, but you've been back there, not just once, but many times throughout your life. And in the dream, you don't question it, because you've lived there, a dream, or a locked memory from another dimension. Some people say they dream of the same specific world, over and over, an ancient city that never appeared on any map, a best friend they only know, in dreams, a job they've had for years, yet cannot describe when awake. The dream no longer feels random. It becomes a series with its own logic, supporting characters and story arcs. In studies on post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, many patients describe being trapped in the same recurring dream, with identical settings, people and emotions, almost like a time loop within the dream. And if each dream is a dimension, then these people are stuck at the same point in a parallel universe. Is that a psychological side effect, or a place where consciousness is anchored? As if you're living a second life in some other realm. There are even moments in waking life when you suddenly feel, I've dreamed this before. That's not déjà vu, but a rarer version called déjà rêvé. It's not the feeling of having lived this, but having dreamed this. And the weirdest part? Every detail matches, uncannily. Could this be a memory from another dimension, secretly feeding you a clue? The multiverse theory. Is every dream a fork in the road? According to quantum physics, the universe may not be a single straight line, but a vast branching tree, where every choice you've ever made creates another reality. You went to law school, another you studied music. You turned left at a street corner in 2017, and another you went right. From that point, the universe keeps splitting, and different versions of you continue to live out parallel lives. So what if dreams aren't just brain noise, but temporary links to those versions? Jorge Luis Borges, the Argentine writer, once said, "Every decision not taken is still lived by another version of me." He imagined a garden of forking paths, where all possibilities happen, and dreams are how we accidentally peek over the neighbor's fence into the next universe. Ancient traditions believed this long ago. Australian Aboriginal people have the concept of dream time, where time in dreams is real, when ancestors travel across the spirit world, Shamans in Peru call dreams the door between worlds, where the soul crosses physical boundaries to meet other versions of itself. In Jewish mysticism, there's a concept called olamot, layered worlds the mind can slide into when the body is silent. In other words, dreams are journeys, not imagination. But can you travel without remembering where you've been? The scary question is, if you're living another life in dreams, is someone else dreaming your current life? And if so, which one of you is real? Some people even say they dreamt of a stranger, and months later met that exact person in real life with the same face, voice, and unnervingly familiar gaze. There's no clear scientific explanation, but if parallel universes truly exist, maybe, sometimes, a tiny portal cracks open at night and someone steps through. Maybe, as physicist David Deutsch said, the universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it's stranger than we can imagine. One moment it's vivid, 3 minutes later, only mist remains. The dream slips from your hands, vanishing as if it never existed. You wake up, heart pounding, emotions still raw. You remember every detail clearly, what they were wearing, what they said, and how they looked at you. But just a few minutes later, you blink. Everything slips through like sand between your fingers. You try to reach back, but the more you try, the whiter the blank. Some people call this the golden window of memory, the first 5 minutes after waking, when the fragments of a dream still float in the atmosphere of consciousness. If you don't write them down, they dissolve like fog. That's why those practicing dream journaling often keep a notebook beside the bed, to jot things down even before their eyes fully open. Is the brain deliberately erasing dream memories? Scientists point out that the hippocampus, the area responsible for memory storage, is very inactive during dreaming. Unlike memories from the waking state, dreams aren't encoded into long-term memory. They only exist temporarily in the brain's RAM, and when you wake up, the brain reboots. Most of the dream is wiped clean. Some scientists call this reverse encoding, where the dream memory still exists, but is stored in a way inaccessible to the conscious mind. Like a recording in a language you've never learned, it's still there, still broadcasting, but you can't make sense of it. The question is, who set the password? But the real question is, why erase it? If dreams are meaningless, why go through all this trouble? Or is your brain protecting you from what you saw? A deeper theory suggests the brain deliberately keeps you from remembering dreams, because if you remembered everything, you wouldn't be able to tell what's real anymore. Imagine recalling every conversation in dreams, every hug, every time you flew off the ground. You'd start doubting the world around you, doubting yourself. You'd call your best friend, unsure whether they were from real life or from the dream realm. The physical world would lose its certainty. Some neuroscientists compare the brain to an information security officer, tasked with sealing away images that are too intense or too surreal to process in your waking life. Not because you aren't smart enough to understand, but because you're not ready to live with that truth in daylight. Just like how trauma survivors sometimes lose memory of the event, not because the brain is damaged, but because it chooses to lock it away. But then there are dreams. You never forget, not because you tried, but because they leave a mark on your mind like a scar made of light. Some people say a dream woke them up and made them change their lives. Someone, after a single dream, forgave a person they'd hated for 20 years. Someone else dreamed of dying, and when they woke up, they saw life as worth living again. Dream memories, when powerful enough, don't need storage. They engrave themselves. So what determines which dreams stay? Maybe emotion, maybe symbolism, maybe your own consciousness decides not to forget. Or maybe there are dreams that, though you can't remember them in words, still leave impressions in your emotions and behavior the next day. You wake up with a heavy chest, or quietly feel like crying under the noon sun. You don't know why, you just know that something happened last night. The mind forgets, but the body doesn't. Like a night watchman, leaving behind a few love letters and burning the rest. You fall from the 40th floor. You crash into the ground. Everything goes black. And then you open your eyes, lying safely in bed, drenched in sweat. Death in a dream, just a joke, or a sacred ritual. There's an urban legend everyone's heard. If you die in a dream, you die in real life. Sounds logical, until you meet someone who dreamt of being eaten by a shark, falling from a plane, getting executed, or exploding like fireworks, and they're still here, sipping hot tea, telling the story. The truth is, many people have died in their dreams, and then woken up just fine. Not because the dream was fake, but because death in a dream isn't an end. It's a signal. Death in dreams is a metaphor for transformation. Psychoanalysts like Carl Jung believed to die in a dream often symbolizes rebirth. You don't actually die. A part of you ends, so another can begin. An old relationship, a bad habit, an outdated version of you. Instead of saying something cliché like, let it go, your dream throws you off a cliff. Some people even dream of their own death multiple times, in various forms, being shot, falling, dissolving. It's like the subconscious is teaching the same lesson over and over until you get it. The first death is shock, the second is acceptance, the third might just be freedom. It gives you the feeling of losing everything, so that the next morning you wake up lighter. The brain is rehearsing the one thing no one wants to think about. Some neuroscientific studies suggest dreams about death are the brain's way of simulating extreme situations, a survival rehearsal of sorts, like how your body runs a fever to fight infection. The dream creates a test death, so you can get familiar with the inevitable. In certain neurological experiments, researchers recorded spikes in heart rate, changes in blood pressure, and surges of cortisol, the stress hormone, right at the moment someone was dying in a dream. The brain and body don't treat it as imaginary. They react as if you're actually living and actually dying. Some people, after dreaming of their own death, experienced major turning points in waking life, quitting a toxic job, starting to say, I love you, or finally daring to live as themselves. Death in dreams can be an emergency exit for stuck souls. It doesn't smash through reality, but opens a small crack of light, so you can peer through and whisper, how much time do I have left? And the answer is, still some, if you choose to wake up. Do the states of consciousness during death and during dreams have something in common? Those who've had near-death experiences report, I left my body and floated near the ceiling. I saw a white light and relatives who had passed. My whole life played out like a movie. These descriptions eerily resemble deep dreams, where you don't know who you are, where you are, or how time flows. Maybe dreams aren't mental noise. Maybe they're brief touches at the border between life and death. You die in a dream. But what exactly dies? In many ancient cultures, from Greece to Tibet, dreams were seen as training grounds for death. Mystics called it the art of conscious dying, where one learns to dissolve inside a dream without panic. They didn't just learn how to die, but how to live, as if each morning was their first breath. Maybe it's a belief you've clung to too long, a fearful ego, a heavy memory, and when you wake up, you feel something has left. No one rings a bell, there's no funeral, but you know, something died, and something new has just begun. Every night, you lie down, close your eyes, turn off the light, and disappear from the world. No alarms go off, no one mourns. But in truth, you've gone somewhere, a secret retreat from everyday life. You don't board a plane, you don't sign a form, but your mind, light as vapor, slips out of the room with 4 walls and taxes to pay. You drift into a place with no address, a place where physics doesn't operate the way you were taught, where time stretches like rubber bands, and no one calls you by your real name. Consciousness doesn't sleep, it just switches roles. In the warm darkness of sleep, your rational mind steps aside, but the deeper part, more primal, wakes up. It paints strange worlds, leads you through memories, symbols, fears, and sometimes strange glimpses of the future. A dream is not just the leftovers of yesterday, it's the back door of consciousness, where you get to live without being bound by logic. And if the dream world is real, then what is waking life? What if you are living in one dimension that is just one of countless layers? What if every night, when you dream, you're logging out of this reality to visit another you in a different timeline? No one knows for sure. But what is certain is, you're not entirely here and not entirely there. You are something in between, a traveling soul, borrowing this body for a few decades to try out being human. So what is sleep, if not a ritual? A ritual you perform each night, with no sacred music, no chanting priest, yet it takes you to places no plane could ever reach, where you see your parents again, where you speak to a monster that turns out to be the pain you never dared to name, where you die, and in the morning, you rise again. You call it rest, but maybe it's travel, a way for the mind to return to where it always belonged, beyond time, beyond limits, and beyond all maps.